Welcome to you all. My name is Mark Morley, and this is the IT Business Partner Podcast, a unique series where I'm joined every week by business partners and business relationship managers from around the globe. Every week, we share the lived experiences of BRMs and business partners, the stories that spark ideas, challenge assumptions, and offer practical strategies that you can put into play today. Before we jump into our conversation, I've got two favors to ask. The first is if you've got any thoughts or feedback about the podcast, please share them in the comments. We'd love to know to what extent this series is helping you and what we can do to improve it. And secondly, if you're finding value in these episodes, please hit the follow or subscribe button. So on to today's episode, and I'm excited to be joined again by what is now a serial podcaster and BRM pioneer, Megan Diehm. She's an IT business relationship manager for Resultant based in the US. Every time I speak to Megan, we run out of time and realize that we need another episode. So I'm delighted to welcome Megan back, especially as this time she's brought a very special guest of her own. So good morning to you both, and thanks so much for joining me. May I ask you to briefly introduce yourselves before we can discuss for the first time on this series what BRM looks like from a CIO's perspective?
Absolutely. I'll kick us off. My name is Megan Diehm. I am an IT business relationship manager here in the public sector for City of Fort Wayne, Allen County, and City Utilities. I brought one of my favorite partners today, and this is Bob Thiele. He is our City of Fort Wayne CIO, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Megan.
So I'm the current CIO. I started approximately 1 year ago in this position, followed the prior CIO for about 4 months. And at that point in time, the BRMs were just kind of getting reorganized. We had a BRM program here for a couple years before that just never really took off until all new cast came in and Megan kind of took the reins and really ran with it. We've had some really good things since.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bob. And yeah, I mean, I must say, from speaking to Megan a couple of times now, I think it is fantastic that the way you have developed this BRM capability and the things that you're doing with the team are incredible. Bob, if I can just come back to you quickly. Coming into the organization, I mean, were you were familiar with BRM as a capability before you arrived? Is that true?
Not to the extent that I am now. I'll say it that way.
Okay.
First introduced to us when Resultant got the contract. I have been with the city more or less for approximately 30 years, but as a contractor with other contractors, and was actually with a subcontractor of Resultant until I took this position. So that was our introduction to BRMs when hired by the subcontractor for Resultant. So
okay,
it definitely changed when Megan took the reins. And before, we kind of thought of it as kind of a project manager, kind of a person that just kind of went and talked to a department here or there just to get a status update and then came back. That's what it kind of was, and not what it should be. And that's where Megan kind of took over and really ran with it more as an actual true BRM type department.
And I think if I can just cut in there, so I've spoken to Megan about this. One thing that we have seen in other organizations is when a CIO comes along, doesn't really understand what BRM is or does, and then sees it as kind of a first cost to cut. So that's a cost saving. That's a kind of a feather in the cap. This is a good way to start. But in those cases, I think I guess I'd seen it as this is the CIO's fault for not understanding BRM. But the way Megan has set up a team, and then when you came in, you could see where the value was headed. I think what Megan had done was make sure that she knew that she'd done everything she could to kind of sell the benefits of BRM, and then had set the organization up in such a way that you knew this is something we needed. So I think sometimes we maybe put too much onus on the CIO to recognize the value without it already being demonstrated. So can I ask what it is that Megan had done and what the team had done that when you arrived, you thought, yes, I need this is staying?
The biggest thing, there were a couple of quick wins. So with the new staff, they had to get to know the departments. So some of the prior BRMs had already worked with some of the departments and knew some of the people in those departments and what the departments did. New staff, well, you had all new introductions, and they had to learn what the business does. and government's different than industry. It's its own animal. And during that process, they were looking for things that, what are your pain points? We had a couple of real quick wins from a report manual integration process between two different systems that took someone approximately a half a day. And there was over 50 steps in the process, of a lot of which was just manual modification of the data.
Right.
To a query that we now run, and the whole thing takes maybe a minute total, including the uploads and everything else, because they actually want to look at the data too. So huge win, because that process happens every other week for our payroll system, but for two departments. So we were onboarding another department on that software, and they said, this is nuts. And so we took a look at it, and so a day every other week, I think that's pretty good payback right there. And then another one was for fingerprinting. We had the techs for doing fingerprints were sharing a machine. And so by the time you go through and do the analysis, then the next person would have it, and then you had to go back and do another one. And by testifying, you had to prepare everything for court. We have a backlog. There's always a backlog. So adding a little more hardware and another software license totally changed the throughput of that department. And they are catching up on their backlog simply because we added 2 more PCs. That's it.
Wow.
Super simple, no-brainer type things that I never would have came across myself. Just by them going through and being able to interview in the departments and sit there and see, what are you doing? Well, to recognize when things just don't look right and bring it up. So that is something that you need someone to be able to go out and do, get the trust, and sit there and watch.
Yeah, and I think this is something that a lot of people, a lot of CIOs don't understand, is you have the extra pair of eyes, but it's not just a pair of eyes, it's someone who understands the business, understands your technical capabilities, and knows where gaps are and how they can be filled. No one else is looking for these things. So this is where the BRM team is so critical, because they're looking for things that no one else is looking for and then finding solutions to them. So this is something I don't think, but again, I think BRM teams in other organizations probably could be doing a better job of kind of trumpeting themselves, showcasing what it is they do. Megan, could you tell us a bit more about what, when Bob came along, how you made sure that the BRM team value was kind of clear for all to see?
Yeah, I think the first thing we did was we kind of shifted how we operated. Before, we used to meet with all the leaders, department heads, the managers, that kind of thing. But with the new team, I wanted us as close to the work being actually done as possible. So, for example, those 2 things that were mentioned were probably things that the higher ups maybe didn't see because they weren't doing that kind of work, right? And so what our team really had to do was, number 1, understand their business and who's actually doing the work and how do they create that throughput and output, and then what does that look like down the road. So the departments, typically data will originate here, but then it's processed across multiple places, right? So understanding kind of the life cycle of the data was the first thing. And then the second thing was something that Bob and I have really worked on quite a lot this past year, which was qualifying what we're going after and where we're investing time, energy, and effort. And so really starting to measure what that ROI looks like. What do we anticipate the outcome to be of certain changes? And then what will that bring to the business? I think in the beginning, that was always a really difficult thing to quantify. And we have been working really hard, especially here, to understand and quantify those so that we are investing our resources in the right places. Not to say that everything doesn't warrant investment, right? But to say we have to be really intentional with taxpayer dollars and the things that we go after and the efficiencies that we chase in order to build up some workforce resilience too in some of these processes. So being able to define success, measure what the expectation is, and have that conversation with the controllers and the other department heads of, this is why we're chasing this kind of project, and this is why we're investing these resources where they are. And this talk that sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And for me, I really am going for ROI. We have to have something coming back on it, unless it is a mandate from the state or federal government. We have to have something that is a positive, helps pay for what we just did. There's status quo. You can always stay with the status quo, but I have a limited amount of money that I can spend. So if I can spend it to actually help improve the city's processing some way or another, whether that is saving man hours so they don't have to hire more employees, or just increasing what our throughput is, again, so we don't have to hire more employees. That is a really big thing for on our side. To me, IT is here to make everyone more efficient. And to do that, we also have to have good data. So data-driven analytics and return on our investment. If a project does not make financial sense, I'm going to go with something else. And Megan's team is great at pulling in some of those metrics and defining, this is what our current status is, this is what our expectation is, and if along in the process we aren't going to get that return, we drop the project. It has to be there.
Do you think that
work hard? Sorry, I was getting We also work to tie everything back to Bob's strategy and his vision for the city. We started the year off by brainstorming and building out really what his strategic vision was and what his 3 pillars were. And so as we hear or learn of opportunities to create efficiencies, we're also working to ensure that everything we invest in ties back to that strategy. So we're bringing their strategy in alignment with the IT strategy, which also helps to build a consistent language across not just IT and Bob's vision, but also with the departments. And then they understand how their goals bring that vision to life.
Just from a language perspective, Bob, can I ask, it's easy when you're in a role or in a field, the language that you use is just the language you use. It's difficult to see it as jargon, but then when you talk to someone in a different field, obviously it's difficult for them to understand. So do you find that having your BRM team, it does really help you understand what the business needs, and conversely, that helps the business understand what it is that IT can deliver?
They do. They bring a lot of value there because they are meeting with the departments. They can see what the departments are actually going for and bring that to me, and then can say, yeah, that's great. And we might double down on what the one department is doing and spread it across the entire city. Their ability to go through and actually look at what each department is, bring it back, talk to each other. And because it's not just the city of Fort Wayne that they're working with, they're also working with Allen County. And we share some resources, but we also, 2 different governments, but a lot of things are the same. And we get to take from experience from either side. And that's what they're bringing back to the table for us. And then as far as making things, I'm better at IT than I am at making things look pretty. I will say that Megan's team can really put together a good presentation. A lot better than me. Mine would be, here's some straight figures and facts, and here you go. And that might not be the best layout for the presentation that I should be giving. So they are a great sounding board too, coming back to for me.
And do you find talking to your peers, other people at the C level, do you find that that's easier now that you've got the BRM team, because they're able to effectively translate, you can bounce ideas off of them. You can say, this is kind of this is where I'm headed, this is the strategy I've got. And then when you take that back to your business colleagues, they kind of understand you better because you've been able to bounce off of your BRM team.
It does help. And we hear things both ways. So sometimes I go, hey, did you guys hear about this? And they're like, oh, no, just met with them and they haven't heard about it. Or they get coming back the other way. They're saying, oh, hey, did you know about this? It's like, no, I was just with them. They didn't mention that either. So it helps provide a full circle of communication, which
Right.
as large as our city is, we don't have the best communication at times. And they help really pull all that together, and not just on IT projects, other things as well. They can bring things back that for controller's office for financial, they're like, oh, hey, that's good to know too. So for the BRMs, it's more than just here's an IT need. It is really true. This is what the business needs.
Yeah.
And they're pulling all that together and wrapping it up. And that is totally awesome. I mean, I cannot say how great that is.
Just on that same point, because I've been speaking to people before, and they've said they're in a board meeting. The CIO came in, did their pitch, walked out, and then everyone else turned to themselves and then said, "What was that about? Did anyone understand that?" And it's because the guy came in with his own language. It was, people see IT as a bit of a mystery because no one understands it. No one wants to question it. So things can, if there's an issue, it can often go unchecked because no one will challenge it because they don't have the confidence. So do you think IT as a function works better because you're able to clearly explain it to your colleagues, and that they maybe don't even need the explanation because they already understand, from their teams?
Yes.
Everyone's on the same page.
Some of the things that we can put together, just from the amount of facts that are brought in, and then the presentations that the BRMs can put together for me. Simple, quick graphics that tell a lot more than what I can say. It's just like no-brainer. It's like, oh, I didn't notice that. And then it's like, okay, yes, go ahead. And it's also bringing, for IT, our job is to support business. That is our job. We are not a revenue source. We are definitely a consumer of, we are a drain on the cost. We're needed. So our goals should be the same as the business goals, and they should align. And the BRMs are really helping make sure that they do align.
No, I think, from that, just to touch on that, because we've been in, again, conversations where people have said the IT budget's too much. And then so IT say, well, how much is too much? When do we need to stop spending? What isn't important to you? Can we cut back on this? Can we cut back on that? But again, it's because IT isn't really understood that no one really understands where the money's going or where it should be going. So it's a bit unfair that people kind of judge based on what they don't understand. I mean, Megan, how much, in your day-to-day role or when you're pulling reports together, how much of this do you kind of have in the back of your mind that, you're really helping to champion IT and make sure the business understands its role and responsibility?
I would say that stays pretty front and center for me consistently throughout conversations. The biggest thing that I want people to understand when we're meeting with them is IT, think of it kind of like your utilities, right? You don't think about turning on the lights at work, right? But it's a line item on the budget. So what you need to understand is what you're getting from that, right? Illumination helps you to see the work, to be able to process the work, things like that. And so when you start to marry the technology to how they're actually using it and the benefits that it brings, it's less abstract. One of the things that we did early on in the contract was we did a lot of network hardening from a cybersecurity perspective. And that was challenging for some people because they thought, oh, the boogeyman, right? The hacker and the blackface,
Yeah.
And people it didn't feel real. It just felt like this abstract concept of a bad guy. But the more that we were able to help marry those things and help them understand, yes, I understand two-factor can be frustrating and it takes a little bit more time, but look at, these are the things it saves us from.
Right.
Making it applicable to their world is the way that people start to understand how they're actually leveraging something. everybody is on a computer. That's typically their daily driver, right? In terms of doing their work. So what on that computer empowers them, and how can we help to support that and make it more efficient, or even improve the status quo? So I always try to marry it back to how technology is benefiting them, and then also what's emerging, right? What can we start to do forecast-wise to understand how to evolve what you're doing? It's not just let's do it this way because we always have, but let's understand. And sometimes we put some of those just constraints over time where it used to have to be this way because of X, but that's no longer there. And so having those conversations and challenging the status quo and asking hard questions, and then also listening to understand, helps us to tie the technology back to an applicable thing that they understand. But it also gives us things that when we go to Bob is one person, right? And there are 4 of us. So now Bob has information from 5, and he's able to see and receive and make decisions at a much higher level because he's getting more information. Our team meets with different business units. So like departments, we centralized, and we have BRMs manage those. But when you think about the fact that we start to go that inch deep and a mile wide, could you imagine being one person responsible for everything without really having the bandwidth to sit in every single meeting? What we're able to do is we're like, hey, we're in all of these meetings. We're going to give you a download on everything that we're hearing. This is what's progressing. These are some of the challenges we're hearing. And then we discuss some of the trends. A couple of weeks ago, I had sent Bob a 6-month trend report where he was able to see, what are the consistent themes that we're hearing? What are some of the things that we need to start considering for maybe 2026, 2027 from a technology capability perspective, so that we can continue to be proactive in the skills that we bring to the organization? Because if we do not continue to skill up our IT team, then our skills are going to fall behind the market.
Bob, is there do you find that there's a lot that you can delegate to your BRM team that would otherwise be a headache for you?
Yes.
Maybe a little bit more.
I send them. I am a hands-on person. I really, truly am. And Megan is trying to break me of that somewhat. She's trying. But there's 75 departments. I don't have time to go and meet with every department every single week. I just don't. And to try and keep a handle on what all of them are trying to do, I can't. And if they bring information to me, or department asks me about something, and I'm like, hey, find more information on this, and they bring it back, and they've dissected 6 ways past Sunday, but this is what, here you go. These are all your options. This is what to do. And it's like, okay, I like these 3, go get more. And then they come back, so it works out really well. Sometimes I'll dig in when they give me something, and other times I'll definitely delegate back out and say, go give me more. I like it.
Right.
It's
do you find, sorry, man.
I was saying it's a strong partnership. It's a lot of yin and yang, where we will investigate, we understand the business, and then he'll challenge us from the technology perspective. Well, did we do X, Y, and Z? And then we're like, we looked at X, Y, and Z, also these other things, and these are the reasons why it doesn't work. And the beauty of that, it has empowered our team so much, because Bob is very hands-on and he does want to participate. He's not somebody who just wants to receive a report, right? He wants to truly understand and to serve the city. So that helps our team know we've got to dig deep, because otherwise Bob's going to know, and we will deliver at the same rate. And we always want to make sure that we are getting him everything he needs so that he is informed, instead of just giving him sound bites.
No, it sounds like that relationship works really well. And it sounds like the way you've pieced it together works really nicely. So it's a great relationship. Bob, can I ask with your peers, what's their view on the BRM function or capability? Do you ever have to kind of justify the team, or do you feel that everyone is kind of bought into it and can easily see the value?
Two peers really at this site that we make decisions together on some things. All three of us decided to go, yes, we're going to go with the BRMs. Two of us paid for additional training for them to let them dig in farther. I think I've probably partnered with them a little more than the other two, simply because I am trying to get that much information back out. And I'm hands-on. I want to know what's in the weeds. For me, if I don't know what's in the weeds, I don't know what shouldn't be there. But on the other hand, I also got to think at a higher level to say, okay, this is the direction that we want to go. But if there's stuff in the weeds that's preventing us from doing that, I got to know about it too. So I'm trying to be on both levels, and it's really hard to do both. And my two counterparts are definitely a little bit more on the higher level only. And I am struggling to stay at just a higher level because that's not where I want to be all the time.
And is that because of that's where you've traditionally been?
Database administrator. So for me, it's the details. And that's what I go back to.
And that's because that's your background and that's what you're kind of comfortable with. And so it sounds like Megan has to...
Data to drive my decisions.
Right.
That's what I lean on to make the right ones. Not just gut. Sometimes it's gut. Sometimes this is the data that says this is what we have to do.
But then it sounds like, Megan, that you're doing more and more to kind of alleviate those concerns and provide more and more data so that at least Bob doesn't have to get his hands as dirty, but it's the information he's looking for is at his hands.
Yeah, I would say there's a bit of a balance as being a BRM. His two peers, one of them is approaching retirement, so he's starting to think about succession planning and what that looks like, right? Whereas the other peer is very strategic. He's high level. He wants to understand the big picture. So it's a lot of understanding who you're working with and how they process information and what they need in order to make a decision. You've got to learn the data, but you also have to navigate the politics and that culture challenge. And every entity is a little bit different in how they navigate some of those internal culture and politics challenges. And so one of the things that we're able to do is while we gather the data, we're also understanding the impact, the culture, and the people part, because every situation or every opportunity is comprised, I coach my team that it's comprised of three things, right? People, process, technology. We can't fix people. We can enable process, but if there isn't a process, then we have to start there. And then technology is an enabler. It's going to enable things. It's not going to change people, and it's not going to fix a process if the process isn't well defined. So we have to be able to not only give the data, but also the people and the process piece as well, because that helps to paint the full picture. And sometimes you don't see the people in the process piece in the weeds or in the data. So that is one thing that we try to make sure we bring forward and help paint the picture across so that there's a big understanding of what we're trying to solve. So for example, with that fingerprint, it may seem like a very small investment, but a high yield, but that's a relatively small team. So to them, it was such a game changer. It actually, for them, multiplied their throughput, I think it was 200%.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So like, think about that. That's almost like adding additional team layers for them, and then they're able to be more efficient, they're productive. It took a lot of strain off of them. But what we found was it wasn't just a technology challenge, right? It was also people in process, because they didn't know to challenge or even ask what could be different. And so those are the things that maybe on the surface you wouldn't have seen in the data that this was an opportunity, but you see it when you learn the people and the process piece.
Yeah.
And then the data supports that it is an opportunity to gain those efficiencies. So my team has really learned how to dig in to understand all three of those buckets to inform the CIOs regarding things that we are working to overcome.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because something I hadn't really thought about before. I see BRMs, there's obviously a lot of value that you bring. One of those things is enabling innovation, because you're always looking on the forefront of what's coming. You're doing your research, you're seeing what is important to the business. You're kind of rationalizing projects. You're keeping an eye, you're making sure what's coming into the funnel is only what's important. One of the things I hadn't really thought about was the business process improvement. I mean, this is kind of what you're talking about here. So it's not just what can you do with technology, it's how can we help the business? We can see what they're trying to do. How can we improve what they're trying to do, or how can we, streamline it? So that, I think, is a great thing that we haven't really touched on much on the podcast or in this series. But Bob, from your perspective, is that something that you see that there's been a lot of value driven from that it's like a surprise value, if you like? It's not something you would expect the BRM team to do, but it's been a great bonus.
Yeah, it's been learning through, and the changeover from the old BRM team that we had to the new one. It's been a complete change in the way they operate. And it really is. They are looking at all three of those. They are trying to understand the business and what's going to help reach those business goals for the different departments, what the departments are trying to accomplish. There's different ways of going about it, and they do the research and see what's actually being done and give suggestions, and that really helps.
Has there been anything else that the team has done that has surprised you in a good or bad way, but where you've given them a room, you've given them a kind of responsibility, what you're kind of asking them to do, but they've gone and done something extra, and you thought, wow, this has been incredibly helpful to you as a CIO and to the business?
Every single one of them has grown so much.
Right.
And it's been less than a year. It's been about 10 months, 10, 11 months that they've been on board. In that year, from being deer in the headlights to, okay, I know I go and I meet with departments, to actually bringing back, this is what they're trying to do, and here's all the cool things that it can do, or these are some of the issues that they're having, and they're bubbly. Instead of being, okay, here's a report, they're bubbly, they're excited about it. And that excitement goes back to the department too, when we say, okay, I'll take a look at this. And then they're like, yeah, we'll go and do it. And if one finds something, go look at the other departments and see if there's something similar. So for e-training, that's another good example of what we're doing. The system that we had before, we had 186 logins over the prior 2 years, and we were paying for 2,000 seats.
Right.
Okay. So utilization was not quite there.
Yeah.
And we also had another e-training system that we were paying for that pretty much no one even knew about it, and there were 0 sign-ins into that one. So it didn't make sense. One of the departments was also looking for some training, and something I've heard here for a long, long time. And we said, okay, that department's going for it. We took it on too. And so what one of the people in the department said, we hijacked their project, but they got it. Their department didn't have to pay for it, which the department was happy about.
Yeah.
But then we also extended it citywide, and we're still working on rolling that out. But so far, we already have more people that have logged into this system that we haven't rolled out yet than we had into the prior one for 2 years.
Right.
So for success, I think we're going to do it. And our public works department, the engineers, on Autodesk training for CAD. Strong system for that, and they're super excited, and they're already rolling it out to the new employees that are coming in. And coming up with curriculums, making sure that they understand how best to utilize the software to do the designs. So yeah, it's wonderful on what they can bring back. And then if one finds something, go look at the other departments, see if there's a common need. And if it is, then we can make it work.
Because this is something else that is brought up occasionally, but not really celebrated, I don't think, is the cost savings, where the BRMs are able to stand back and look around and think, well, okay, well, do we need that? Do we need that? Is that being used? And I've heard many stories about people that, like this, uncovered costs that are just going unchecked and no one's utilizing it. And I think, these IT vendor companies that will sell something, take the money, and they know that it's not being utilized, but they would never dare say anything because it's obviously money in the bank for them. But
Right.
do you find that is something else that you feel safer, that you've got a team kind of scouting around, making sure that there aren't these costs going unrecognized?
Absolutely. And they can also give information. So if another department's starting to look at something, they go, oh, hey, this department has that.
Yeah.
And then we can go look and see how they utilize it and whether it's good or not. So that feedback really, it is lateral, not just up and vertical, which helps the entire city.
Do you just talking about ROI? Do you think the BRM team has paid for themselves?
Last year, yes. The way they have been doing it, absolutely. Strictly on one project, the number of hours that we've saved is more hours than what they have put in. So I know they are paying for themselves.
Is this something, because I know with the Notion tool that you're able to track a lot more now, is this something you can track, the cost savings that the BRM team has found or made?
I know Megan is trying to work on that, and it's hard to quantify at times. It is
hard
hard
to quantify. Yeah, and some of that's because it's soft dollars. You've got hard and soft dollars. So some of it is department hours and things like that. So we have been identifying, as we define what the success criteria is and how we are going, like our anticipated expectation of the return, we are able to measure that over time. But that is something we've really focused on honing over the past year. And we have built out a healthy deck for Bob that ties his strategy to some of those different initiatives with some of those anticipated returns. But one of the things I will say with the BRM group is sometimes it takes a little bit in order to see that ROI and to get on the other side of that. So that's why we focused in the beginning on small wins to build off of. So we had immediate impact.
Yep.
We built trust right out the gate. And then we were able to invest time in some of these longer lead time initiatives so that we had partners going into them, right? So when somebody has a win and they understand what they're going to see on the other end, they're willing to partner with you differently. So we are now at a point where even with this e-training, right? We are seeing such an immense return on what we were able to achieve with the platform. And we did that cross-departmentally. So we brought together several departments who likely would not have came together to look at training platforms, and we unified them, and we have more enrollees than signed up or logged in 2 years anymore. So those things do take time, and we're working on being able to close them quicker. But the nature of this work is it's an investment. It is a lot of, farming, right? You have to plant the seed, water it, and over time the fruit comes, but it's not immediate. And so those are some of the things that it really takes trust and partnership for them to be able to see kind of the fruit of that relationship.
And the thing is with BRM, it's like you're investing in the soil rather than the actual plant. Because the teams that have these products or go away and build stuff and create the services, it's more easy to see that fruit and to quantify it. But what you're doing is you're enabling all that, and you're also preventing wastage elsewhere and value leakage elsewhere. So trying to put a number on BRM is very difficult. I can get that.
We also do focus on being able to maximize our investments. So we did have a platform that the city implemented beginning of the year. We started, I think it went live over the summer. But because that platform had additional capabilities, we were able to stop some of the other initiatives and dollars that were being invested in other platforms so that we could consolidate to a singular platform, which helped you build a stronger process in the city and across some of like the boards as they were submitting agendas and things like that. We were able to bring that process into a unified platform instead of having multiple different platforms.
Right. And just on that, Bob, when you first joined, something that has surprised me from some of the large companies we work for, I mean, household names, they don't have oversight of the programs that are ongoing. So they can tell you something about a program, but where that program sits alongside another and which one is kind of more or less important, which one's going to deliver value quicker, which one's going to, be replaced by something else. It's not something many people are paying attention to. Was that similar when you joined, that you didn't have the same level of oversight?
In some respects, yeah, if you just look at a department, the departments don't care so much about what other departments do. The prior CIO was here since the mid-'80s. So he had been around long enough and worked in IT long enough that he knew what the departments were and what all the applications were. For me as well, I've been here quite a while, so I kind of understand what some of those products are. There's some that I got here, it's like, oh, I didn't even know we had that.
Right.
Which, okay, as you learn through. Part of the way that we have the financial portion set up, I have to go through and approve everything that is going through for IT, whether it's my department or not. So that gives insight as well as far as what some of the other departments are doing. And some of the financial analysts will say, hey, did you happen to see this? This went through on a different line item. Just based on the name, they ported it onto me. So having that kind of check and balance with the controller's office really helps on making sure that everyone's doing what they should be doing and that no one's trying to get around some of the security things that we have in place simply because, it might be easier.
Yeah. Would you say that your BRM team are enabling you to kind of do more than you'd originally thought you would need to do as a CIO, that you're able to absorb maybe more from the business or extend further to look further into the future, or to kind of conceive projects and programs that would have otherwise been not possible?
They have helped speed up the amount of knowledge that I've gained more than tenfold, and there's only 4 of them.
Right.
Just simply because of the amount of time that they can put in and then go out and gather and compare notes and all that. And then I hear things back from other division heads or department heads that are saying, oh yeah, and by the way, one of the BRMs brought this up, and have you thought about this yet? So I get it on both sides, which is good. They have definitely sped up the process of me coming in.
That's awesome. And just going on from what you're saying about hearing it from other departments, I mean, this is a thing I think where it's really important for BRM teams, that it's not just your own executive, your own CIO that appreciates your value. It's that the rest of the business do. And that's something, I guess, just comes with time and trust and building your credibility. Yeah. But it's not just their peers, the BRM's peers, the people that they're working with. It's your peers, other executives in the organization. If you can get to a point where they recognize the value, that makes the whole function more stable and more secure for the future, I think, because if at some point you did decide to move on, we can kind of feel more confident that your predecessor or your successor, would moving to the position knowing, this is the organization, it's going to remain as it is. Is there anything that you you can do personally to kind of safeguard BRM going forward?
Well, as we change out contracts, that can be something that we write into contracts too. So we have outsourced our IT since 1986 was when it was first outsourced. So that's been, a little while.
A little while.
And in the contracts that are written up, we say what the vendor has to do. And part of that, we can say they have to do the BRM type roles. We can also specify that they actually have to make an offer to certain individuals. And in some cases, we do that, where it's just really key personnel that we really want to keep. And that person has the choice whether they want to go or not, but the company has to at least make an offer to hire them in order to help safeguard continuity of business.
Right.
And if you're outsourcing and you're changing vendors, we've changed vendors 4 times since I've been working with the various vendors, and I have moved and I've switched vendors and stayed working kind of the same job, more or less. So it's important that we can do that for the continuity.
Yeah.
But we can do it on both sides, not only just the person, but also the function.
Yeah.
Because we see value in it.
Do you think, I know it's only been a year since things have really got going and got matured, I guess. Do you think BRM is yet seen as one of the stable functions like project management or business analysts, or these roles that have been around for a lot longer? Do you think BRM now has the kind of same credibility as those older roles?
I think in the past year they have developed that credibility, yes.
Right.
Prior to that, I would say no, it was not there.
And how do you feel about that, Megan?
I think that's a really fair assessment. Like you said in the beginning, people kind of looked at us as an order taker, or, hey, check on my ticket, get some status on this project or something like that. And we weren't really maximizing a true capability. And now that we have a new team and we've had this year of intense development, focus and expectations, and also some strong partners, it has evolved quite a bit. I will say, I think that different areas experience the BRM differently. So maybe in the utility, they truly understood the value of the BRM, but it wasn't the same maybe in the city or the county, just because of the nature of who was doing that role. And now we're able to see a more consistent BRM experience across the entirety of our team. So the label means something now because it's more consistently applied, whereas in the past, it wasn't as consistently applied.
I think, just as I've been listening to you both, my kind of appreciation of the relationship between the CIO and the BRM team, I think I've got a different perspective on it now, because as I said at the start, I think I put too much onus on the CIO to kind of know what BRM is and can do. But you've done a fantastic job, Megan, of highlighting what can be done, making sure you are organized, that all your ducks are in a row. But at the same time, you've got a CIO in Bob that appreciates what you've done, can see the value in what you've done, and can see where it's going. So it really has taken both of you to make this work. If Bob had come in and loved BRM, but you just weren't performing, I think that would have been a tricky challenge. And likewise, if you had displayed all the wonders of BRM, but Bob just wasn't on board with it and wasn't ready to receive it and kind of open to what you could do, it also wouldn't have worked. So I think you've been quite lucky, your organization, in your this partnership, because it just seems to work really well, and you've both given each other what you need to be able to kind of take BRM forward. And when we're doing this podcast, I'm trying to think about the advice that we can give to other BRM teams to how to make this work. And it really is not a one-sided answer. We can't kind of, with all the tips and tricks we can give people onto how to be a BRM, they really need this CIO to be on board. And I'm hoping Bob's view that he's sharing here on what can be achieved and how the benefits that he's received from the BRM team. I'm hoping that maybe can help other people share that within their own organizations, because it is you need both sides, unfortunately. without one, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and we both pushing the other one to do better or give more of, to align what we're trying to do, and then also do more along those lines. And it's taken a little while to get in sync as far as where I think I'm going, and I've changed my mind a couple times. Tried to be fairly consistent so far, but as I've evolved more of where I think I'm going, Megan and her team have also aligned more along with that as well and adjusted. When I first started, it's like, okay, I'm just following along, and then after about 2 months, I started taking notes of, okay, this is what I think the role should do, my role. This is what my goals are for the city, and what I think IT's true function is. And Megan's team kind of helped put that into buckets and categories, different than the way I had it, but probably better. But then they also understood a little bit more of where I was kind of coming from and where I was going. So that kind of helped align that a little bit more too. And as I push them, I want more information on this, they start adding that into the information they bring back. And if I find something that I don't need, they might not gather so much of that anymore. And that kind of ebbs and flows as time goes on too. Might be another year or two from now, I go, hey, no, what about this stuff? I need more of that. And they'll swing back around. So you have to challenge each other to give the best decisions for the organization. It's not just one person. You really need to work together.
Yeah. I think one of the key things here is that you've been open to that. I mean, I think one of the challenges, especially with people that come up through the ranks, you've been in IT, and then you're a senior IT, and then a manager, and then you become a CIO. You worked in the organization a long time. You've seen how everything works. Everything's done kind of just so. It's been this way. So then to get used to something, and things are working, to get used to something, and then to have to sit back and think, well, actually, maybe I don't know it all. Maybe this thing that I'm thinking isn't the right way. It's not the easiest thing for people to do that. So the fact that you are doing that, and you're giving Megan's team the space to be creative and suggestive, I think that's really amazing and fortunate again for the organization, because without that, you wouldn't have got to where you are. So, and I think that's something other organizations do struggle with, is that they have these people in charge that have a certain way of working, think that they know the way things should be, and aren't open to these suggestions and new ways of working. So again, I think it's just a fortunate relationship, a fortunate way of working that you've got here, that it does bring out the best in both of you, if I can say it. And ultimately, it's the best for the organization, because that's obviously, what you want. Yeah, I've seen
it really is a blessing. It really is a blessing. And frankly, being able to check each other's blind spots and then have that candid conversation of, I know we're marching towards this. Are we sure? Did we consider X, Y, or Z? Is really important, because it challenges the way that I think, and it challenges the way that he thinks. And together we arrive at a much better place when we're able to have those frank, raw conversations that maybe some people would shy away from, right? So because we are still going to be the ones who have the hard conversation and listen to one another, and we respect each other enough to know that if they're asking me this, there's a reason why they're asking this, and maybe challenging something.
Yep.
Just having that partnership and appreciation, I have to say, you are absolutely right. Most leaders are, do what I say, don't question me. that kind of thing. But having a true executive who not only has a voice, right, but also respects you and really wants to make the best decision. So he will listen and he will take a minute to walk through some of the concerns that you have. And whether or not they're relevant, it does make us better at the end of the day. And I do believe that because we have that trust and the candor with one another, that we know that we're coming from a place of we want to be able to provide the best that we can provide the organization at all times. So we really want to make sure we're considering all of those blind spots. What other risks are we not considering? Or do we have to go all in? Should we stair step it? What does this look like from a experience perspective? It really has been such a blessing, especially as a BRM, to have somebody who wants to hear the challenge and has opinions and thoughts and will make a decision, but also wants, let's consider what would happen if we don't do this? Because you've got to be able to see both sides to make strong decisions and to benefit the organization as a whole. And that trust, it does come over time, but also it comes with a lot of that respect. And I respect Bob immensely. And I believe he respects me. And that's why. See?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we can have those frank, candid conversations where we're challenging one another, but challenging from a good place, because we both come from wanting to serve and do our best. And because we respect each other so much, we can say the hard thing to one another because it's coming from the right place. And that trust does take time, but once you have it, it is such a blessing. And for other BRMs out there that maybe are struggling with their CIO, the thing that I would say is start to learn and understand what they need to make decisions. Like Bob said, he is evolving as he's stepping into his role and he is building out the vision for where we're going. He is evolving. And so we have to be adaptable and pretty agile in our process. But he does need specific data points. So we're going to gather those data points, and we're also still going to bring the people in the process because we're going to paint the whole picture for him. And there are some things that we intentionally look into because we know he's going to ask us those questions. And that's because we have learned how he works. And learning how someone works and then tailoring your output to empower them is really the biggest thing for a BRM capability to be seen and to bring value to the organization as a whole. If I served all three of our CIOs in the exact same capacity and gave them the same exact output, it would be received three very different ways because they process and make decisions differently. So learning people and your partners and respecting the way that they dig in to understand is critical to building a relationship that is rooted in trust and respect.
No, that's I think that's wonderful and it's very helpful, and I think that's something that hopefully people listening is going to be a big help to them, because I think that's sometimes it's hard to understand. If you've got something that works with someone, why doesn't it work with someone else? And I think people don't invest enough time in learning who it is they're working with and for. So I think that's great advice. I've seen that we're at the end of time now, and I don't want to take up too much of either of your time, more than I have. But Bob, I'm really, really keen to hear, if I can, your parting words, advice for BRMs if they're struggling to get buy-in from their CIO. How might they win it? And Megan was just giving us a good idea of that. So that your advice to BRMs, but also your advice to other CIOs and why they should give BRMs a chance, and if the BRM function isn't working properly, how they might be able to remedy that.
So, advice to CIOs. You need information not just from other people at your level. You need to know the details underneath. You might not need to know all the details, but you need to know what's really working, what's not working, and the reasons why. And you're not always going to get that from farther out. You need to know what's actually in place and being used. There's a lot of things that in our organization, it's like, that server's still there, or this is still there, that we uncover, and it's like, didn't even know that existed. So you got to have people that go through and dig that. You're not going to get that yourself. You need people that can go out and work at a different level than what you are to get truly the information you need. So like the mayor is a very personal person. She likes talking with everybody. And if the mayor comes up and talks to most employees, they're like, oh, everything's great, right? But they talk to somebody else, and it's like, oh man, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, right? So you need that other level.
Yeah.
And then for the BRMs, there's 3 CIOs here. All 3 of us are really focused on different things. I would say Ed on the county side, his main focus is finance, which is really good. The one for the city utilities, he is really more focused on super high level strategy. It's like, this is great, big picture brush going all the way across, but then when trying to implement, then it's like, I'm done with that, I'm going on to the next cool thing.
All right.
But you kind of got to be able to go all the way in between. So for the CIOs, know the details. You still got to look at the higher picture. Use the BRMs to get you the information that you just can't get. You don't have the bandwidth in order, unless you have a bunch of staff, which I don't. You don't have bandwidth to be able to go and do research for yourself either. Let them help you do that. For the BRMs, they need to figure out what is the CIO's core focus. And they did that a great job of, where do you want to go? They asked me that. And I said, okay. I had shared part of my documentation before and with Megan, and she goes, well, all right, I kind of like this, but let's sit down with all the BRMs and we're going to go through it. So find out where you want to go, where the CIO wants to go, help them get there. And if something's not right, let them know, because it's better to hear it from somebody that you trust than finding out after that it didn't work and the reasons why it didn't work.
Yeah.
Building that relationship. And if you say, hey, these are the reasons why, and you lay out a decent case, the CIO should listen. Their job is to make good decisions. And if you present to, these are the reasons why, they should be able to make a good decision from it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, listen, thanks so much to both of you for your time. Thank you again, Megan, for setting this up, because it's been really amazing to hear from a CIO. Bob, I really appreciate your time. This is the first time we've heard from a CIO. And as I said, I've always had a certain view of CIOs that don't get BRM and business partnering. But it's been nice to have this conversation, because it has kind of helped me understand that it was because both of you came to the party that it's worked. And as much guidance and support as we can give BRMs, if they don't have the right kind of CIO in place, it's not going to work. But conversely, even with the right CIO, if the BRM team aren't operating correctly, aren't building credibility, building trust, and ultimately, performing as they should, again, it's not going to work. So it's been great to get this perspective and this input. And I'm hoping it's helpful to people listening, because it's certainly helped change my perspective a bit. So thank you again. Really appreciate your time. And I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon, Megan.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks again, guys. Thanks, Bob.